Hey everyone, welcome back to another 10-minute enterprise. Today we're going to look at Windows Admin Center. I've already downloaded it here, so I'm going to go ahead and install it. It's super easy. There is a little customization you can do to it, but we're just going to leave everything for defaults now. I have set up this client machine on our domain and have logged in with our admin tech user account that we created back in our first video for promoting a domain controller. It's just about done. All right, and now we're going to check the box, open Windows Admin Center, finish. Go ahead and just keep Edge for now. Okay, and now you can see that we have our Windows 10 client automatically added to Windows Admin Center. We're going to come over here to Add, and we have several choices here. We have Windows Server, we have Windows PC for Windows 10 boxes, we have Windows Server Cluster, and Azure VM. You can connect this to Azure and manage some of your stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Add here for Windows Server Cluster, and we're going to type in our cluster name, FT Cluster. Okay, it found that. And now we're going to basically just click Add. Take a look at this. So we did find all of our servers in the cluster as well, not just the server's name. So click Add, and here they all are. And here's our cluster itself. We're going to go ahead and click on it. And if you notice, now we're in the cluster manager section instead of just the computer manager. And it's going to verify that we're actually running an S2D server. And it's getting that information. It's going to populate it for us. All right, and here we go. Where is the dashboard? Currently we have no alerts, which is good. It looks like we do have an update that we need to apply at some point. We have 6% CPU usage, 17% memory, gives us our total storage that we have, 666 gigabytes. We have 654 gigabytes available, 11.6 is used. Current IOPS tells us some of the performance history here. Average latency, 13 nanoseconds. That's good. You can also look at this right now this is set to hour. You can actually set it to day, or you can set it to week, and it will show you all that information. The cluster hasn't been up and running obviously that long, but it will tell you all the spikes and things. And you can go back up to a year, keeps a year's worth of data for you. So it's really nice to get just a general overview of the status of your actual cluster. And now we're going to come over here to let's take a look at volumes. Volumes here, it shows you your current IOPS for all your volumes, latency, and throughput. And again, you can look at hour, day, week, month, and year. If we come over to inventory, it tells us these are the two volumes. Here's our cluster performance history, and here's our actual VMs volume that we created last time. And we can actually click on it, and it'll show us here's our used space, here's how much we have available, our total size, gives us our IOPS, latency, and throughput. And if we have VMs running on this store, it actually tells us what virtual machines are currently stored on here. And it'll show us the storage tiers. So we have dual parity and with three-way mirror. So lots of information in here to look at. There is an option in here to enable deduplication and compression. You can turn that on, and that's fine. It works really well. I haven't had any problems with it. However, if you ever need to disable deduplication and compression, you have to have enough storage space for everything to decompress. And that can take a lot of space if you're not careful. You may end up having to extend the total capacity of your pool and then extend the total capacity of the volume in order to do that. It'll actually give you a warning if that is something that's going to happen. It actually does a check before it turns it off and says, hey, you need this much additional space before you can disable dedupe and compression on this. There's also integrity checksums. This you can't change unless you're setting up the volume the first time. but it is there if you want to create a new volume in here. It does give you the file system type, tells you the path it's currently at, what the fault domain awareness is. So if you have you can have a complete server go offline and this volume will be perfectly fine. Tells you the total footprint, how much space is actually being taken up across the entire amount of pool, and the current size of your virtual disk or your volume. So lots of information here. You can go in, choose to expand, you can offline, you can delete. Like if we wanted to come in here and say expand, it's really easy. We get to choose how much we want to expand in our SSD tier and our hard drive tier. So let's give it, let's say we have 200 for SSDs, and let's give it 600 for our hard drives. Actually, let's make it 650. Yeah. So estimated additional footprint on hard drives is 300 gigs. Estimated additional footprint on SSDs is 150 gigs. So new total footprint is going to be 1.86 terabytes. So let's hit expand, and it's going to expand that, and there it is. It's done. Really simple, really easy. All right. Let's go back here. Let's actually look at drives. This is an awesome little place to look at all your drives in the server. If you look, this tells you the total capacity of your SSD tier and your hard drive tier, and it tells you what the reserved capacity is. All right. Something we can look at here, our hard drive capacity. Currently we're using 1.29. We have 276 gigs of available space, and we have 400 gigs of reserve capacity. But if you notice, our actual used space is eating into our reserve. So if we're not careful, we'll end up in a situation where if we have a hard drive fail, we won't have enough space to rebuild the data that was on that disk automatically. So just something to keep in mind here. Let's take a look at inventory. And the serial number is actually going to show unknown because we're using VHDXs in a virtual machine environment, but it does show us this current size, tells us what the bus type is, SSD or hard drive, tells us what it's used for. In our case, it's all capacity. Tells us the location and tells us what server it's in. And you can actually sort these if you want. It'll take a second to refresh. There it goes. SSD or S2D1, S2D2, so forth and so on. So you can actually take a look at this, and it'll give you a status of okay, warning, or critical, depending on what the health of the drive is. It tells you how much space is actually being utilized on the drives. It's really some good information. And if you want to, you can actually click on the disk itself, and it'll tell you even more info. It tells you what the location is, what server it's in, its size, bus capacity, manufacturer, who it is, what model it is, the serial number, what firmware version it's at. It tells you what storage pool it's currently in, and you can actually click on retire. If you look down here and you see an error or anything with the drive that keeps it having high latency for writes and reads, you can actually forcibly retire this disk. And here we can actually click on show latency and error statistics. This will take a little bit to run, but if you want to, if you think you have a disk that might be going bad, you can come in here and click on that button, and it will tell you, okay, how many slow IOs you had and what percentage of the total amount of IOs it's had that have been slow. And currently we have 0.04%. That's not bad. This is for latency that's been over 2 seconds. Generally, if it's over 20 milliseconds, you might be a little concerned, especially if it's got if the percentage is really high, and when you look at 16 or over that. So 10%, granted, taken into consideration, this is a virtual environment, so it is going to be slower, but if your physical disks are having really high percentage rates of slow IOs and over 16 milliseconds, then I would be concerned that that drive may need to be replaced. Okay. That's it for the drives. We can also take a look at our virtual switches. Just get this to load up here. Okay, here it comes. Being that this is the first time to run anything, it's going to be a little slower because it hasn't cached anything. But we can take a look here. Here's our S2D 1, 2, 3, and 4. It tells you what the names of the virtual switches are, and tells you what kind of switch type they are. And you can create or rename them if you need to keep live migration working. However, they do need to be the same name, so make sure that they are spelled the exact same. They don't have to be capitalized the exact same way, but they do have to have the exact same word, spelling, everything to get that to work. And there's a few settings you can come in here and change. Yeah, we can just change the switch name. The load balancing algorithm, you can change that as well, but leave it at Hyper-V port. Since we're running Hyper-V in virtual machines, that's what it needs to be set to. And that looks to be about it. Next, we're going to take a look at servers. So currently we have 4 servers. They're all showing us healthy, but we can come over here to inventory. It'll show us the servers individually, and we can click on the server's name. And this will show us some more info. Here we go. It tells us the serial number, gives us the OS, and then it gives you charts for all of these that you can again look at hour, day, week, month, and year. You can also obviously look at your virtual machines. Now we just have the one virtual machine currently running. I think it's shut off right now. But this will give you the summary of all the virtual machines that you have on the system. And we can also obviously go to inventory. We can see the virtual machine itself. Okay, here's our virtual machine. We can go in here and say settings, and you can edit just like you can in Failover Cluster Manager the general information, so the name of the virtual machine, what its automatic start action is, the automatic stop action, what to do in a critical situation. Look, if the storage disappears for some reason, minutes to wait before pausing the virtual machine. You can go in here, configure memory, enable dynamic memory, change the processors that it has. You can even enable nested virtualization, which is really cool. You can look at the disks that are currently assigned to it. You can look at the networks. You can enable checkpoints, obviously, and you can come in here to security if you're using a secure boot. You can come in here and change that as well. And you can do shielded VMs. Okay. Over here you have the option to move. So we have this check mark next to the virtual machine. We can come over here to move. We're going to move it in the failover cluster. Choose the best cluster node and click move, and it will start moving it over. Now this VM is currently stopped, so it's actually doing a quick migration. But if the virtual machine was up and running, it would do a live migration for us. And we can start the virtual machine from here. And it successfully started. Well, that pretty much wraps up Windows Admin Center. I hope you guys enjoyed this video series. Next, we're going to be adding a remote desktop gateway to our environment so that we can remote desktop into our virtual machines as if we were outside of the office. It's a really handy tool. It's free, it's built in, you don't require any special licensing for it. And you can remote manage all your servers and your desktops, assuming that remote desktop is enabled. It is secured through SSL and an HTTPS, so it's pretty nice. It only requires port 443 to actually be opened, so you can forward that one port on your router instead of having to open up 3389 and a range of ports to get to each desktop. You just do it at one spot, and it's a lot easier and a lot more secure. So definitely check it out. Thank you guys for watching, and hope to see you next time. Stay safe.